Hello everyone, and today we're gonna explain about grammatical equivalence. And we take the material from a book titled In Another Word by Muna Baker. Grammar is the set of the rules which determine the way in which units such as words and phrases can be combined in the language and the kind of information which has to be made regularly explicit in the uterus. Grammar is organized along two main dimensions. The first one is morphology, covers the structure of the words and the way which the form of a word changes to indicate specific congress in the grammatical system. And the second one is syntax, the study of how words are combined to form sentence and the rules that govern sentence structure.
Choices in language can be expressed grammatically or lexically depending on the type and range of linguistic resources available in given language. Choices made from closed systems, such as the number system, out loud singular/plural, or the pronoun system in English. The most important difference between grammatical and lexical choices, as far as translation is concerned, is that grammatical choices are largely obligatory, while lexical choices are largely optional. Language which have morphological resources for expressing a certain category, such as a number, tense, or gender, have to express certain categories regularly. Those which do not have morphological resources for expressing the same categories do not have to express them except when they are found to be relevant. Because grammatical choice is drawn from a closed set of options, it is 1. Obligatory, 2. Rules or other choices from the same system by default.
Grammatical structure also differs from lexical structure is that it is more resistant to change. It is much easier to introduce a new word, expression, or concurrence into a language than to introduce a new grammatical category, system, or sequence. Grammatical change occurs over a much larger time scale than lexical change. On the volume, the grammatical structure of a sequence remains fairly constant throughout the lifetime of an individual, whereas one encounters new words, expressions, and colloquies on a daily basis. Grammatical rules are also more resistant to manipulation by speaker. A deviant grammatical structure may occasionally be asserted in very restricted contexts. For instance, in order to maintain rhyme or metry in poetry, the diversity of grammatical category across languages, it is difficult to find a national category which is regularly and uniformly authorized in all languages. Even categories such as time and number, which many of us take as reflecting basic species of experience, are only occasionally indicated in some Asian languages such as Chinese and Vietnam. On the other hand, a number of American Indian languages such as Yana and Navajo are grammatical categories which is many other languages would hardly ever be expressed even by lexical means. These languages, for instance, have a category of shape, which means that an object must be classify it according to whether it is long, round, or seed-like.
The differentiety of grammatical category across language. Different in the grammatical structure of the source and target language often result in some change in the information content of the message during the process of translation. This change may take the form of adding to the target text information which is not expressed in the source text. This can happen when the target language has a grammatical category which the source language lacks. In translating from English or French into an American Indian language, such as Yana or Navajo, one will have to add information concerning the shape of any object mentioned in the text. Likewise, in translating into Amoesa, one would have to indicate whether any person mentioned in the text is dead or alive. The tau, which are ignored in the shortly but which have to be significant in target language, can pose a serious dilemma for the translator if they cannot be reasonably inferred from the context. Number. The idea of countability is probably universal in the sense that it is readily accessible to all human beings and it expressed in the lexical structure of all language. However, not all languages have a grammatical category of number and thus that not necessarily view countability in the same terms. This distinction has to be expressed morphological by adding a sub to a noun or by changing it from in some other way to indicate whether it refers to one or more than one. Student to students, fox to foxes, man or men, child or children. Some languages, such as Japanese, Chinese, and Vietnamese, prefer to express the same nation lexically or more often not at all. The form of a noun in this language does not normally indicate whether it is singular or plural.
Gender. Gender is a grammatical distinction according to which a noun or pronoun is classified as either masculine or feminine in some languages. The distinction applies to nouns which refer to animate beings as well as those which refer to inanimate objects. For example, French distinguishes between masculine and feminine gender in nouns such as fille or fille, son or daughter, and cha or chati, male cat or female cat. In addition, nouns such as magazine, and construction are also classified as masculine and feminine respectively. Determiners, adjectives, and sometimes verbs, as in the case of Arabic and Swahili, usually agree with the noun in gender as well as in number. English does not have a grammatical category of gender as such. English nouns are not regularly inflected to distinguish between feminine and masculine. The gender distinction nevertheless exists in some semantic area in the person system. Different nouns are sometimes used to refer to female and male members of the same species. Voice. The use of the passive voice is extremely common in many varieties of written English and can pose various problems in translation. Depending on the availability of similar structures or structures with similar functions in the target language. Because of it, widespread use in technical and scientific English in particular, and it has had a strong influence on similar registers in other languages through translation. The tendency to translate English passive structures literally into a variety of target languages which either has no passive voice as such or which would normally use it with less frequency is often criticized by linguists and by those involved in training translators. Voice is a grammatical category which defines the relationship between a verb and its subject. In active clauses, the subject is the agent responsible for performing the action. In passive clauses, the subject is the affected entity and the agent may or may not be specified, depending on the structures available in each language.
The most common distinction is that between first person, identifying the speaker or group which includes the speaker, English, I, we. Second person, identifying the person or persons addressed, English, you. And third person, identifying the persons and things other than the speaker and addressee, English, he, she, it, they. Number of languages spoken in North America have 4 rather than 3 distinctions in the category of person. In addition to the main distinction based on participant roles, the person system may be organized along a variety of other dimensions. As mentioned earlier, the person system in some languages may have gender or number dimension which applies to the whole system or parts of it. Tense and aspect are grammatical categories in a large number of languages. The form of the verb in languages which have these categories usually indicates 2 main types of information: time relation and aspectual differences. Time relations have to do with locating an event in time. The usual distinction is between past, present, and future. Aspectual differences have to do with the temporal distribution of an event. For instance, its completion or non-completion, continuation or momentariness in some languages. In the tense and expect system or parts of it may be highly developed with several fine distinctions in temporal location or distribution.
A brief note on word order. The syntactic structure of a language imposes restriction on the way message may be organized in that language. The order in which functional elements such as predictor and object may occur is more fixed in some languages than in others. Acting language vary in the accent to which they rely on word orders to signal the relationship between elements in the clause. Compared to language such as German, Finnish, and Eskimo, word order in English is relatively fixed. The meaning of a sentence in English language with a similarly fixed word such as Chinese often depends entirely on the order in which the elements are placed. Some language inflection which indicate the relationship between the elements in clause. For instance, does what to whom. In such language, the form of a noun changes depending on its function in this clause. Introducing text. In order to make some headway in describing and analyzing language, we have had temporarily to treat linguistic units and structure as if they had an independent status and possessed meaning in their own right. We now need to take a broader look at language and to consider the possibility that as part of language system, lexical items and grammatical structure have a meaning potential. This meaning potential is only realized in communicative events, that is, in text. Text is defined here as the verbal record of communicative event. It is an instance of language in use rather than language as an abstract system of meaning and relations. Text versus non-text. The phraseology and the collocational and grammatical patterning of the target version must conform to target language norm, but even then the translation may still sound foreign and clumsy. Worse still, it may not even make sense to the target reader. Acceptable collocational pattern and grammatical structure can only enhance the readability of individual sentences, but they not in themselves ensure that sentences and paragraphs add up to a readable or coherent text. A text then has feature of organization, which distinguish it from non-text, that is, from a random collection of sentences and paragraphs. Just like collocational and grammatical patterning, and a host of other linguistic phenomena, these features of text organization are language and culture specific. Each linguistic community has preferred ways of organizing its various types of discourse. This is why target readers can often identify what appears to be a lexicality and grammaticality normal text as a translation or as foreign. A translation may be undertaken for a variety of purposes. However, in the chapter that follow we will assume that the ultimate aim of translator in most cases is to achieve of measure of equivalence at the text level rather than at word or phrase level. 19 more often than not, a translator will want the reader to accept and given translated as a text in its own right, if possible without being unduly alert to the fact that it is a translation. To achieve this, the translator will need to adjust certain features and source text organization in line with preferred way of organizing discourse in target language. The following chapter will attempt to outline some of the main features of the course organization by looking at number of factors which constrain or aid the way we produce and understand text.
Any text in any language exhibits certain linguistic features which allow us to identify it as a text. We identify a stretch of language as a text partly because it is present to us as a text, and we therefore do our utmost to make sense of it as a unit, and partly because we perceive connection within and among its sentences. These connections are several kinds. First, there are connections which are established through the arrangement of information within each clause and the way this relates to the arrangement of information is preceding and following clauses and sentences. This contributes mainly to topic development and maintenance through thematic and information structures. Second, there are surface connections with established interrelationships between persons and events. This allows us to trace participants in a text and to interpret the way in which different parts of the text relate to each other. Finally, there are underlying semantic connections which allow us to make sense of a text as a unit of meaning. These are dealt with under the heading of coherence and implicator. Classified in two main ways to capture this type of packaging. The first and more straightforward classification is based on the context in which texts occur and result in institutionalized labels such as journal article, science textbook, newspaper editorial,
or travel brochure. The second is more subjective, less institutional, and therefore much vaguer classification with tasks not normally applied to a whole text, but rather to part of it. Typical labels used in this type of classification include narration, exposition, argumentation, and instruction. The first classification abstract across context, the second abstract across such factors as the nature of the message involved or the address or addresses relationship. But both types of classification are useful if defining translation problems and in justifying specific strategies to overcome them. Reference to institutionalist genres such as religious text and newspaper editorial is made wherever applicable throughout this book.